Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the last speaker of this morning. Like oil in the 20th century, data and digital could be the new source of power in this century. With the digital transformation, the nature of our leadership and business model may change a bit. Our next speaker of this morning will give us more insight in the impact of digital technology in our society, on our business processes, and more broadly on the global markets. To give you an overview of Tim Cole's CV, that will lead us too far, and I don't want to shorten your lunchtime, so I'll just summarize with the most important topics of an impressive professional life. Spending part of his life in the US, he started his career as a journalist after having his degree in Master in History and Philosophy in the US. Tim Cole's observations and analyses covered an extremely large scope of subjects, but the one I especially noticed was his visionary role in '92 at the very beginning of the Internet wave, where he became the Internet journalist of Germany. He's the author of several books and bestsellers, and one of his books has been awarded by the leading German business daily Handelsblatt as one of the 100 best business books of all time. In 2004, he founded Kuppinger, Kohl & Partner, an analyst group on digital entity and identity management, again, long before the digital hype started in many industries. Ladies and gentlemen, with the quote, "Digital transformation has mainly to do with corporate culture," and a very beautiful song, may I welcome you, the wandering preacher of the German internet, Mr. Tim Cole. Thank you.
Imagine there's no country. It isn't hard to do.
Yes. Hang on here. Okay. Someone actually hid a microphone here for me. Yes, thank you. It works. And the presentation hopefully will be on the screen immediately as well. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Too bad Mr. Klaus is no longer here. I think he would be neither surprised nor offended to find that I disagree with almost everything he said about immigration, borders, and the euro. But I think he would have liked that. He seems to me to be what the French call an agent provocateur. He likes to irk people, get under their skin. One thing, though, that he said was spot on, and that was transformation is a process that takes time. And I would add, digital transformation is not the result of misguided investment by governments on IT, as he suggested, but actually a driving force that itself is driven by three really big trends, each one of which would have the power to change the world. But if you combine them, of course, you create this perfect storm where nothing remains as it was. I think the ramifications of digital transformation will be felt over the next decades in every single area of human endeavor, in business, in our private lives, in society, and in government. To understand that, I need to go through the three trends with you very quickly. The first is digitalization. For some reason, we're all very excited about digitalization again, although we've been doing this now for about 20 years or so, or 25. And in fact, digitalization is almost finished. There is no information left in your companies that is not available in digital formats. It actually turns out that digitalization on its own doesn't really change very much. I mean, what actually is the difference between an analog vinyl record and a digital CD? Both can play music, both cost effectively the same, and there are people who believe that vinyl sounds somehow warmer and nicer, and there's a boom going on now for old-fashioned vinyl records, and in Switzerland the largest media department store just shut their CD department, and they opened a vinyl department. Don't believe that vinyl is going to come back. This is the niche of the niche of the niche, but it's interesting to see. What digitalization really does, it speeds things up. Clocks in the digital world tick in synchronous with Moore's law, doubling every 18 to 20 months. Of course, humans still work on analog time, and that's a problem. Some people think that their head just can't keep up, like Mr. Schirmacher, who used to be the publisher of the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Too bad for Frank. Of course, he died, unfortunately, much too early. I would have loved to keep fighting with him, but kids, look around you, look at your own kids. They have no problem keeping up. It's us old guys that have a problem with our heads stuck in the past. The second major trend is connection, because once you start connecting digital systems, you start changing them. There is no way you can avoid change if you provide connectivity. We are rather proud that we have been connecting our systems now for years and years, and some of us actually believe that we live in a totally networked world. This is a fallacy. We are actually at the very beginning of connectivity. We still are waiting for IT to fulfill the promise that they have given us for years and years now, namely that we will bring the right information to the right place at the right time. Some of you may remember that this was IBM's slogan for years, until they became so embarrassed that they gave it up and started talking about smarter planets. The reality is we have created digital islands within our companies, within our establishments, within our organizations, within our governments. Individual departments of the company have gone to IT and said, build us say a CRM system, customer relationship management. We want to store all the knowledge we have about our customers in a computer system. And the procurement people wanted to have an e-procurement system, and the manufacturing wanted to have a supply chain management, and the salespeople wanted to have a web shop. And every time, IT did exactly what they were told. They created the system, but nobody ever said to them, and make sure that the information within this system is available in every other system, so that everyone in the company can have a look at it. The result is something like this. You have digital information which cannot be transferred from system A to system B without being printed out and retyped into a different other system. We are far from creating the totally networked companies that we dream of, and we are even further away from the dream of an Internet of Things, a totally connected world. If we can't even get a formula from the computer A to the computer B within our own company without printing it out and throwing it in this mailbox, how can we create a totally connected world? The third trend is mobility. We have cut off the wires. Kids today only have a smartphone. They don't need anything else. They can do everything that they want with a smartphone. They don't need a desktop computer. They don't need a laptop. All they need is this little gadget that fits in their pockets. And here you see the 14 to 18-year-olds, about 90% of them actually rely totally on one of these gadgets. They are actually entering a kind of symbiosis with their smartphones. We can see it every day when they sit around a table sending each other SMS messages or Snapchat messages across the table. You know, they're always sitting here like this because they have this horrible system where they have to look at a screen and they have to type in on a keyboard. Of course, this will change very soon. We will actually be controlling our devices through thought. I was in Linz at the Ars Electronica a couple of months ago. Any of you probably remember the old game called where you played tennis. Pong, it was called, where you had a paddle and that you had to, with using a potentiometer, you put the paddle up and down, and there was this ball of light flying across the screen, and you hit it back to your opponent, and he had to put his paddle in the right position. I was steering this with thought waves. Of course, today I have to wear this horrible helmet with lots of sensors stuck in it. In a couple of years, I'll have a brain-computer device which will enable me to do this anytime I want and everywhere. We are becoming more and more part of our own technology. We will be melding with our own technology. Ray Kurzweil, a very famous futurist in America, believes that we will become superhuman, super intelligent humans by sort of, joining forces with our own technology. I'm slightly skeptical about that, but I do believe that we will actually be seeing the world with other eyes in the near future. Possibly not with these kind of TV glasses that science fiction people thought about in the 60s, but how about a pair of these glasses, Google Glass, a pair of glasses that can project digital information before your eye so that you constantly are consuming both reality and virtual reality. What happens? Of course, the two will meld, they will flow together, and eventually we will no longer actually be able to determine where the one starts and where the other leaves off. If we think this through to the logical conclusion, it might look like this.
Excellent. Perfect. Good job. Excellent. Well done. Level complete.
Okay, the secret you will see when you look him in the eye. He's either wearing contact lenses or possibly lens implants with Google Glass capabilities, so that everything he sees is augmented by digital information. If he looks in the icebox, he can see what's in the containers when the due date is. And so everything becomes a video game. Slicing cucumbers, for instance. And of course, if you miss, you can always press the reset button and take a new cucumber. Digital scrambled eggs, fried eggs, they are perfect, and you get points.
Snail zombies from your backyard.
Life is a journey, and in this journey, we all want to do more, experience more, feel more, and live with no boundaries. And why shouldn't we? Sight System presents Sightseeing. Feel free to go anywhere.
Okay, well, we can cut off the video here. It continues. He has a date with a young girl who he doesn't know, blind date, and the glasses keep playing information in front of his eyes that tell him what kind of music she likes to listen to and what sports she does. And once he's too quick for the machine, he says, look, are you hungry? They make good burgers here. And it goes, she's a vegetarian. The date ends bad, as many blind dates do. Digitalization, connectivity, and mobility together form what we call digital transformation. But we mistakenly often think of digital transformation as a kind of an organic, evolutionary process, sort of like the caterpillar slowly turning into a beautiful butterfly. The reality is that digital transformation is more like the shifting of tectonic earth plates. And we know what happens if one of them rubs along too quickly. This produces earthquakes, disruption. We should probably talk about digital disruption more than digital transformation. And we are further along on the road to digital disruption than most of us believe. I mean, this can actually rub out a huge company almost overnight. Think of Nokia, think of BlackBerry. Where are they now? To see how far along this road we have already traveled, just think of Alibaba, the largest retailer in the world. But Alibaba doesn't have merchandise. They don't have department stores. Essentially, Alibaba deals in data. Uber, the largest taxi company in the world, has no cars. Cars belong to their drivers. Facebook is the biggest content company in the world, but Facebook doesn't have any content. It doesn't provide content. They don't have editors and journalists that make content. We all do. And we have signed away our rights to our own content. It all belongs to Facebook once we've posted it, and they are making billions with it. Airbnb is the largest hospitality company in the world, but they have no beds or hotels. We are further along on the way to disruption than we believe, and every area of business and economics faces disruptive opponents. A friend of mine, Till Kilman, likes to say that entrepreneurs, before they go to bed at night, should pose themselves the question, which very intelligent young person in Silicon Valley with a great idea and lots of venture capital behind him is thinking about how he can put me out of business. The idea being that if you think about it long enough and you're experienced, you might find the right answer before this young person in Silicon Valley hits on it. And so you would at least have a chance to react and possibly reinvent yourself before it's too late. It turns out that digital transformation always follows a certain pattern, which I like to describe as 3 skips and a jump. When you move from analog to digital to network to mobile, every time you start changing fundamental ways that business processes, that business models function. And we can demonstrate that very easily by just looking at typical departments within a typical company and seeing what has happened already and what will happen in the future. Let's take marketing. Marketing 1.0 was essentially, paint air in beautiful colors. Go to the window and shout out to the people outside, and the person who shouts the loudest is the best marketeer. It's communication from inside to out. It's communication from one to many. This turned on its head the minute that the internet came along, and marketing, of course, had to go and find something to do. Many of them lit on the idea of creating a corporate Facebook page, which was nice if you had something to say. Some companies didn't have anything to say. But essentially what happened here was a very startling experience for marketeers, because here they came in contact with real humans, with customers, because, hey, it's a two-way medium. The customers could enter Facebook and leave comments. They could criticize. They could create shitstorms. And marketing was dumbfounded because they had never been forced to deal with real humans before. Enter into a dialogue with customers? Hey, no, not my job. In reality, this will become even worse. In what we could possibly term marketing 3.0, we will have marketeers being forced to go out and listen. That's another thing they never learned before. And then come back with this information that they have learned about the customer and distribute it within the company to the right people. The right people in each case will be different. Possibly it's sales, maybe it will be product development, maybe it'll be complaint management. But what about our systems that are siloed? CRM is only accessible to people in marketing today. So if we don't finish the job of creating our completely networked company, this won't work. Let's take a different department, sales. Now, shopping used to be a very simple, linear phenomenon. People heard something, saw something, what did? They went to the store. And so all of the efforts of the vendor would focus on this golden moment at the point of sale where the customer reached for his wallet. Shopping 2.0 was when the internet came along and people started buying stuff online. This is highly successful. The growth rates for online commerce, e-commerce, have been continuously growing over the last 20 years. And we are reaching a point now where e-shopping in many areas of retail has actually outperformed the old-fashioned brick-and-mortar store performance. Shopping 3.0 will sort of see us all disappearing into this cloud where we get product recommendations from product recommendation portals. We buy stuff online, but the purchase itself automatically sort of triggers a round of communication, because the first thing we do is we go on Facebook or on Twitter and start sharing our experiences with the vendor and his product with all of our friends. A friend of mine, Doc Searles in Boston, was one of the authors of the Clue Train Manifesto, and he coined this wonderful expression, markets are conversations. And how true it is. But if you've never learned to talk with your customer, how do you want to be part of this process? Let's jump to a different department. How about logistics? Huh? Logistics 1.0 was easy. Make sure the shelves are always full. No? Then the people started buying stuff digitally, but you still had to get the stuff to the customer physically. And that led to the emergence of a whole new industry with hundreds of thousands of jobs created in supply centers, distribution centers, package delivery, and stuff like that. Logistics 3.0 involves the people offering logistics services frantically searching for new ways to reach to their customers, because it's about speed. Amazon offers same-day delivery in many metropolitan regions. Everything has to be faster to be competitive. And Amazon, a couple of years ago, floated this idea that they could possibly use drones to deliver stuff. And everyone was, of course, laughed, because drones, of course, were kiddie toys at the time. Today, DHL, large logistics company in Germany, is actually retraining some of their truck drivers to become drone pilots. And they have introduced drone delivery services in the Alps, especially to remote villages and farms. It doesn't take that long in the age of digital transformation for a party joke to become living reality. But of course, this is still not really completely thought through to the logical conclusion. We still have to deliver stuff that was ordered digitally to the customer physically. How nice would it be if we could deliver digitally ordered stuff digitally? And here, another technology that until a couple of years ago was also considered more a joke or a kiddie toy will play a key role, namely 3D printing, so-called cumulative manufacturing, additive manufacturing, where you just print one layer after another on top of each other. You can change the material in the print cartridges every time and create very, very sophisticated products that way. In fact, today, there is literally nothing that you can't print. Want to print a house? Sure, no problem. There's an architect in Singapore who does it. He created this huge 3D printer that presses a mixture of cement and building materials through a nozzle, and he can build 2 houses a day, which he sells for $5,000. So houses. Of course, today we still have to go to the apothecary to pick up our pills. In future, we probably will print our own pills on our own 3D printers at home. And these pills will be personalized. They will actually be attuned to our own DNA makeup so that we only get the exact doses that we personally need and not this one-size-fits-all dose that we get today. Of course, 3D will transform manufacturing. It's in the process of doing so. Adidas is bringing jobs back from China. They used to make all their sneakers in China. They actually opened a factory near Nuremberg in Germany, which creates personalized sneakers, running shoes. You submit the measurements of your foot, and they will create a really 100% fitted shoe. And they do this through automation, through a 3D printer. Essentially, the sneakers are being printed. Now, this would be a wonderful time for me to describe the triple jump in manufacturing. Unfortunately, I'm from Germany, and that doesn't work because the Germans count differently. They are already talking about Factory 4.0, Industry 4.0. It's because they take the third industrial revolution that us Anglo-Saxons like us like to talk about and split it in two, and that gives them a kind of an advantage, they think. We, of course, prefer to talk about the industrial Internet of Things, IIoT, and both of us, of course, mean the same thing. What we are actually talking about are smart factories. Factories that are autonomous, that regulate themselves, that govern themselves, that monitor themselves, and where, for instance, a machine tool can actually order parts from the central storage, and it will be delivered by some autonomous driving vehicle directly to the machine that really needs it, and not just anywhere else. There will still be humans, of course, in this factory of the future, but they probably won't be wearing blue collar. They'll probably be wearing white collar because their job will be to oversee everything and to maintain stuff, and possibly if a machine breaks down, to repair it. But everything else in this factory can be taken care of by robots, provided that the robots have enough information. Sensors will be the eyes and ears of the Internet of Things, and we will be getting unbelievable amounts of data through these sensors, because everything will be studied with sensors that will be constantly be providing information. There are all kinds of estimates, of course. This one here envisions that we'll have 212 billion sensors in 2020, each of them providing constant real-time information about the state of a machine or a factory or a car or an airplane or whatever. Imagine the amount of data that we will have to somehow process. That's where we start talking about big data, which is a very disturbing and misleading term because everyone thinks of Big Brother, of course. Actually, I think the term is wrong for a different reason. It's because we focus too much on the big. It's about the data. As my friend Gert Leonhardt likes to say, data are the crude oil of the 21st century. We need as much data as we can get, but it has to be the right data. We must be sure that the data is correct, that it is not fake, that someone has not manipulated it. We need sensor security, which nobody has thought about before. We are going to experience almost the same problems that we did in IT security, again, with sensor security, where we have to sort of retroactively fit sensors out with security. But once we get there, once we have the data, we still face the problem of how do we actually make sense of it. The big challenge will be to actually process the data in a way that will allow us to reach conclusions and make decisions. Unfortunately, existing computer systems are not up to the job. The technically minded of you have probably heard of the Van Neumann funnel. All of our computers today work on a process called the Van Neumann system, which has a bottleneck where every piece of data has to go through at one point or the other. So there is a physical limit to how much data can be processed, no matter how fast the systems themselves are. We need different computer systems. We need computer systems that are modeled on the human brain, that can create synapses, that can create connections between seemingly unrelated data and reach new conclusions. Computers that are self-learning, that we don't have to program each time we want to use it. One example here is Watson from IBM. Watson is a cognitive computer, which indicates it is modeled on the lines of the human brain. It can process many, many more times of data than existing computer systems. Another one would be Google Go. Google Go was a system that was created to challenge the world champion in the Chinese board game Go, which supposedly is 100,000 times more complicated than chess. And Google Go won. The surprising thing is not that they won, because we beat the chess world champion 10 years ago. The astonishing thing is that Google Go was not programmed. No one taught Google Go the rules of Go. It taught itself through self-learning algorithms. And then it went out and analyzed all of the published Go championship games on the internet and came up with a winning strategy on its own that was strong enough to beat the smartest human player in the game. What we are talking about here is actually a way to look into the future. If we can make sense of enough data, we can actually start predicting outcomes of existing states. Here, the computer scientists today talk of predictive analysis, and in the area of industry, we like to talk about prescriptive maintenance, for instance, a system that by gathering enough information from a machine can predict when it will possibly fail. Lufthansa is currently conducting experiments with aircraft engines, where they equip the rotors of the aircraft engine with hundreds of sensors that constantly monitor vibration. And if something is not as it normally is, the machine stays on the ground. I assume you all are frequent flyers like myself, and I would find that very reassuring. In Germany, everyone has to take their car to the inspection at TÜV, Technischer Überwachungsverein, Technical Inspection Company, almost 200-year-old company that does all of the vehicle inspections in Germany. And then they get this little pickel, this vignette. I was talking with the head of TÜV a couple of weeks ago, and he's very worried because he says, a car today is essentially a smartphone on wheels. And the car manufacturers constantly are siphoning off increasing amounts of data from the car as it drives around or stands in the garage. And his worry is that someday soon probably, the car manufacturers themselves will be able to certify the health of a car. You won't have to go to TÜV. They will send you the plaquette via email or something, I don't know. In quality control, I just came back from a conference in Bled in Slovenia where the leading people of the world in quality control were talking, and they all believe that the future of quality control lies in predictive quality control, mainly identifying things that could go wrong in a production process before it occurs. So you'd have much more seamless production, less rejects, less outtime. The whole thing will be much, much more efficient. All of this, of course, requires huge amounts of data. And here we have one big uncertainty that still has to be addressed. That is the question of who owns the data. The big Silicon Valley companies seem to assume that our data belongs to them. And unfortunately, we all didn't read the terms of use before we signed on, because that's where we agreed that they actually own our data. This cannot persist. Someday someone is going to have to rein these robber barons of the digital age in. But much more problematic, of course, is the ownership of data within the business context. If I send you the data of a part for your machine so that you can print it on your printer instead of me sending it to you by car or by truck, who does the intellectual property belong to? Me, because it's my part, or you, because you printed it on your printer? That is obviously not fully determined by law. And I was talking with Mr. Oettinger, who until last year was the digital commissar of the European Union. He has called for a European civil code, one that would regulate all of the hitherto unregulated aspects of the digital economy, which in the real world, of course, have been governed by things like the German BGB and others for decades or even hundreds of years. But in the digital world, there is much uncertainty about things like property, things like ownership, things like obligations, things like usage, things like identification. These still need to be regulated, and we need to come to a common understanding of what we actually want and how we want to regulate these things. And the only way, he says, to do this, of course, is on a European scale, because we can't have how many are we, 24, 25 separate laws on digital property or so that would be completely unhandleable. I hope that in the course of this talk we have reached an understanding about where we are heading and how completely fundamental the change is that we are facing. Personally, I would be glad if you were to take 3 lessons home with you. If you remember nothing else about this talk, please remember these. The first is we need to listen. Listening is the essential key to success in the area of digital transformation. We need to find out how things are going, what other people want, and adapt to them as quickly as possible. I think the second lesson is we need to react. We need to react fast. We don't have any time to lose. The clocks are ticking in digital time. If we give ourselves the luxury of just sitting around and thinking for a while, other countries will surpass us. Countries that possibly we did not even think about as essentially competitors. South Korea is the most networked country in the world. It isn't a third world country. And they are all actually pursuing one goal. They want to get our business and take it away from us. If we let them, then it's our own fault. The third, I think, is we need to move on. We are facing an era of unprecedented change. As Gert Leonhardt likes to say, we will see more innovation in the next 50 years than we did in the last 500 years. Everything is moving faster. Everything is in question. So we have to adapt ourselves to the fact that we need to accept change. We need to accept the new. Of course, the problem here is that the new is strange. Of course, we don't know it. The word strange in Greek, xenos, stranger, also means enemy. Some people are uncomfortable with change, you know, because since we don't know it, it's potentially disturbing or disruptive or whatever. I don't think that's the attitude that we can adopt if we want to shape a digital future that everyone will want to live in. We have to move forward. We have to accept change. So the big question now is, are you ready? It's your choice. Hey, you can say no. You can refuse to adapt to change. Unfortunately, as I indicated in the beginning, that wouldn't help because you can't stop the new. You can't stop new things from happening. All you can do is hold them up. But obstruction has never been a recipe for success, I think. So I hope no one here in this room really wants to be part of the problem. You need to be part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim, for your explanation on this subject. There are a lot of questions, but we unfortunately are far behind the time. Just one, maybe, and I will already say to the public as well that you haven't seen the slideshow on the iPads, but I think we're going to provide this through the internet link that people can consult the
just download
slides.
them over there.
I download from
Cole.de
website.
Mm-hmm.
So just one question. Manufacturing of the future is unemployment risk versus employment opportunities. That's the challenge. Will it be neat that there is a sort of a state support in this transaction?
Robots are out to get your job, yes. Will they succeed? Depends on what your job is. I think in areas where jobs are especially repetitive, monotonous, not very demanding of human intelligence, and unfortunately very, very many existing jobs fit that description, yes, robots can do the job better and quicker and cheaper. So these jobs will disappear. I was reading a list of endangered jobs that Time magazine published a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately I found one of the items was newspaper reporters. I used to be a newspaper reporter, so this was very bad news for me. On the other hand, I think the demand for qualified, talented, well-educated people will increase because there are things that computers cannot do, that humans are uniquely fitted for. The problem is we have too many people with the wrong skill sets, with the wrong qualifications. So I think we must put all of our efforts into requalifying those within our own companies for whom possibly there is no other opportunity to work. We need to identify the people that we can bring up to a higher level. Of course, in countries like Germany and others in Europe with a very low birth rate, actually we are shrinking population-wise, we run up against another problem, which is that we will simply not have enough talented people, even if we requalify them, to actually fill all the jobs that we need. So we will need to invest in automation, not to replace workers, but to fill job slots for which we have no people, no qualified people. Take automotive industry. There are jobs on the shop floor in the automotive industry that are not really meant the best thing for humans to do, like lifting heavy weights or working overhead or something like that. These things can be done much better by robots. But the other more highly qualified jobs, they will still need the human touch. There's no way around that. I think the problem is not, are we going to have increased unemployment? The problem is, how are we going to find the qualified people that we will need, even in the age of robots?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.